Hello, this is Melissa Johnson of Wild Ministries, and welcome to the Pain to Purpose podcast with my guest today, Minister Laverne Kimbrough. Welcome to the podcast.
It is so good to be with you and y'all that is listening. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you. And give us one moment. We're getting ready to start. This is Melissa Johnson of Wild Ministries. Welcome to the Pain to Purpose podcast with your host, Melissa Johnson. Real talk, real transformation. Hello again, and this is Melissa Johnson of Wild Ministry with my special guest, Minister Laverne Kimbrough. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It is so good to be with you.
It's so good to see you again and so good to have you on the show. So just a little bit before I go into her bio, she is my friend, and so we have a lot of connections. And so I think the first connection is that we went to the same seminary. And so we went to Michigan Theological Seminary, later was Moody Seminary.
Yes.
And I believe Laverne graduated just a little before I graduated, but we went to the same seminary, as well as we attended the same church.
Yes.
Evangel Ministries in Detroit, Michigan. And we were ordained at the same time
Absolutely.
as ordained ministers. So we have that connection as well as we taught at Detroit Bible Institute. We taught together. Or
Yes.
No, I think I was an intern and you were already a professor.
We taught together. You was a strong backup, and you became and went to the front of the class, and you started teaching. So, Professor, back to you. Yes.
All righty. Well, we was together at Detroit Bible Institute, so we're just kind of knitted together. We haven't seen each other in a long time, but it doesn't matter. Distance doesn't separate the heart. So again, I would like to welcome you. Thank you for saying yes, and thank you for being on this show. I really wanted to have your perspective on the show because of the background that we share together, and that is the background at Ashland Seminary.
Yes.
And what we was exposed to at Ashland Seminary. And I think this is another option for our viewers that is seeking emotional healing.
Yes.
Again, we're going to talk a little bit about that on today. I feel strongly about it because this was an avenue that God used for me to heal me. So I feel very strongly about it. And so I am just so happy to have you today and to discuss this subject. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to get right into the discussion.
Okay.
And it's a lengthy bio, so I'm not going to cover it all.
Oh, please don't. Please don't.
So Laverne Kimbrough is a limited licensed psychologist. She is a lay counselor. She started as a lay counselor in the church. And then she went on to be a professional counselor. And she made that a career. Are you still in that career at this time?
I am retired, but God never allows us to retire. I am currently doing a summer series in mental health in July and August currently. It's an outside summer series in the area of anger, in the area of depression, and also anxiety. So you never retire.
Never retire. Wow.
Yes.
And you received your counseling, I guess your counseling background from, was that Michigan Theological Seminary?
Yes, and then it changed over to Moody.
Moody. Okay.
Yes.
And exactly what did you receive there at Moody?
I received a master's in counseling psychology. And so
Okay.
I am big on integrating your psychology, but with your theology, because the only thing that can change us is a heart change by the Holy Spirit. So I integrate those two.
Okay. That's awesome. And so you are also certified, and I'm going to go off of the sheet a little bit. You are also certified in inner healing. Is that correct?
Yes, I went to Ashland too, Melissa. I don't know, Terry Wardle, who runs that program at
Yes.
that particular time when we were going separately, but we went there.
Mhm.
God used him to heal me from a deep woundness of grief.
Yeah.
Yes. So I learned a lot from him in
Yes.
that ministry.
In that ministry. You actually you went to Ohio outside of Ashland, because at the time I can recall he was having classes separate from Ashland Seminary. He was having classes certifying individuals in that inner healing.
Yes, very
Is that
intensive.
correct?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And I went a number of years. I would go every year. I went probably 5 years in a row, just continually to gain insight and resources and knowledge. But, sometimes we can be over informed but under transformed. But I really sense the transformation that happened in my heart specifically.
Okay, well, we're gonna now listen. I called her Minister Laverne Kimbrough because she's also a ordained licensed minister through Evangel Ministry. And so, as we talk on today, we will probably integrate some of the words. She's also a certified, I'm sorry, ordained minister. So we're going to leave the bio right now and get right into the conversation. Okay.
Right.
I think my first question is this for you. When we talk about mental health, when we discuss mental health on my last podcast, it appeared that there was no end to mental health. There was no cure outside of medication. And I thought to myself, wow, that means people would have to live with this diagnosis for the rest of their life. I thought about emotional healing and I thought about inner healing. First, I would like for you to let our audience know, is there a difference between the emotional healing and the inner healing, or is it one and the same? Do we use those two interchangeably?
Sometimes people do, but there's a little distinction. Emotional healing, it is a process of, first, the individual has to acknowledge and allow and accept that there is pain in their life and there are painful experiences in their life. There are strong emotions in their life that they have sometimes no control or little control, and then they need intervention of inner healing. So emotional healing leads to inner healing. Okay. And so basically, the emotional healing, it is guided by our emotions, but they are all over the place. And we need help to help us, like grief can be one, and you're stuck in your grief. And sometimes grief and depression is interchanged, but they are distinct.
So let me ask you this so we can just get a clear understanding of the conversation on today.
Okay.
When it relates to mental illness, is mental illness the cause for emotional healing? Well, I think my question is that if you're suffering from mental health or mental illness, is that the reason why you would need emotional healing?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Because yes, because mental illness, and I think your last guest
Mhm,
pretty much laid that out.
mhm,
Um, when you think of mental illness, it comes from our thinking
mhm,
and our emotions
mhm,
and behavior. So
mhm.
we grab the symptoms from those three areas
Okay.
to get to a diagnosis, which
Mhm,
is different than medical. When we go to the doctor, they are asking questions about the pain that you are feeling in your body. So your pain receptors is saying, I need medical help. My thinking, my emotions, my behavior is saying, I need mental help, or I need to see a mental health professional.
okay.
So it's emotions is in one box. You still
Okay.
have behavior and you still have thinking.
Okay. So I think your volume on your phone may be up.
Okay, you want me to go down a little bit? Okay.
Okay. It's an echo. Thank you. So when we talk about emotional healing, it can come from the root can come from any place where let me have you give me a definition of that because I'm
Ag-
still not really clear.
Yeah, it's again, it's a process that the definition of emotional healing is a process of acknowledging and allowing and accepting where these painful processings of emotions is coming from.
Mhm,
Emotional healing is all about emotion.
mhm.
That is limited in the sense of mental health is larger than that.
Okay.
Okay.
So emotional healing is really dealing with dysfunctional behaviors. Is that correct?
That's the symptoms.
That's the symptoms.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
symptoms.
Okay.
Yes. You're looking at behavior to
Mm,
get to that's like the symptoms to get you to, okay, where do I need to go?
okay.
If a person is depressed,
Mhm,
okay, then you're going to ask questions about loss
mhm,
recently. And it's not just loss in terms of losing somebody. Somebody can lose their home, their job, or they can have a life loss in the sense of a broken relationship. And
mhm,
that person is no longer in their life, but they alive.
mhm.
That's harder to reconcile because that relationship is not within your preview anymore. It's gone. So when a person dies, you can reconcile that a little bit better than if a person is alive and it's a broken relationship.
So let me ask you a question. So behaviors or thinking such as low self-esteem, thinking of insecurities, does that affect your emotions and how you live out your behavior?
Absolutely, because we want to be emotionally healthy and whole.
Hmm.
And being emotionally healthy and whole, meaning that we our emotions, they are in a good place. We
Hmm.
don't have a low self-esteem of ourselves.
Hmm.
That is just a symptom. You still have to get to the root issue in the heart and the soul of why that person has a low self-esteem.
Okay, so
See, so the low self-esteem is
yeah,
a symptom, so
of
you have to
something.
backtrack. Yes.
Mhm. And that's what I like about inner healing. It's because it gets to the root of
Yes.
where it's coming from. So yes, I may be suffering with my identity. I may be suffering with low self-esteem. I may be suffering from identity crisis. But why am I suffering from that? Now let's talk about your childhood. Let's talk about your upbringing. Let's talk about what has happened to you to make you think that you're less than how God created you. Is that correct? Am I on
That's
the right?
correct. And you hit it right on the head, Melissa, when you
Okay.
said childhood, because that wound happens from age 1 to 18. That's when it's developed. It's a
Mm-hmm.
wound. And so we have to backtrack to that individual when they was a little girl, a little boy, and find out where that door, where that crack was open. And when you think about woundedness, there's a few things that we look for. We call them core needs. And I know you heard this before. And so you want to find out with that individual, taking them back to their childhood, understanding that they have a safe and secure environment. That's a core need.
Yeah.
Were they loved and accepted? That's another core need. And so if they were not loved and accepted, that's a wound that you have to go, and that's where you go in and start doing the emotional uh, therapy, if I may say that. But there are other core needs too: basic care and nurture, connection and belonging,
Mm-hmm.
feeling needful and useful. I don't know if you remember that movie, because movies, they speak life, and I use them a lot. The movie with Viola Davis that she played the help when she
Yeah.
played the maid, and the
Mm-hmm.
little girl in the window, she was leaving, but she told that little girl, she said, "You are loved, you are sweet, and you are kind. People need to be affirmed."
Mm-hmm.
And so the wound, the
Talk.
whole point, the whole point is to find which core need was not fulfilled in that young person's or that person's life when they were a child.
That is so good. I am so sorry. I am struggling with a cold. And from time to time I just get it choked up. Can you talk a little bit about a wound? What is a wound?
That's a good question. What is a wound? Uh, a wound, it is a place of brokenness. It's a place of pain. And a wound is produced by an event or a series of events in a person's life where their core needs, what I just explained, those core needs are not met. And so if those core needs are not met, then those individuals will start filling their soul with things that are unhealthy, trying to fill this hole that they're filling.
Okay.
I remember when I was coming up, I had a wound. I didn't know this until later on in life. And my wound was caused by the loss of my dad as a little girl at 11. And so I was angry with God,
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't let anybody love me because God took my hero away from me.
Right.
And so my wound was a deficit of love. It was gone for me as an 11-year-old. And
Right.
so what I started to do as a teenager, I started to fill this hole that I felt in my soul with drugs, alcohol, and all kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, even though the pleasures of this world were good for a season,
Mm-hmm.
as I got older, I realized that I was not happy. And
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't make sense to me because I had a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took inner healing and emotional healthiness to get to that point to realize what I really needed to fill this hole. And so that was very important for me in my personal life.
Yeah, that's just like you. That's just like a natural analogy is when you fall. If I fall, I scrape my leg, I have a wound there. You know, it can be opened, and
Yes,
it's a wound from me what falling. And so if I don't do anything about it, what's going to happen? The wound is going to it's going to be open, and it's going to take a long time, right, for it to heal. But if I don't do anything to it, guess what? It may not heal properly. It may
absolutely.
close, but internally it may not be healed. The same thing. You know, something devastating happened in your life,
Yes,
and you did nothing. You covered it, you suppressed it, you did nothing, you denied it, and it's still there. But guess what? You have done nothing. And so it's almost like it's suppressed, and you're continuing trying to go through life trying to be healthy, but you're not healthy because you never dealt with what happened to you that devastated you.
absolutely. And what happens is something comes along in our life,
Trigger.
another devastation, a
Hmm.
trauma,
Hmm.
a life loss, or something that we can't handle, and
Hmm.
it goes back and it opens up that wound that never was healed.
Never
So
was.
now we're dealing with multiple things and
Hmm.
wondering why.
And why? Why am I
Wondering why,
right?
right? Why I don't feel healthy? Why I don't feel whole?
Right.
Why do I think these
Mhm.
type of thoughts? Where is this coming from?
Where is it coming from?
And sometimes, yes, we go to therapy, and hopefully that therapist has an understanding of emotional healthiness as
Hmm.
well as the DSM-4. You
Hmm.
know, it need to be well rounded, because the world that we live in now, it is more so emotional trauma coming at us existentially every single day. You
Mm.
know, all you got to do is turn on the TV. That's why I tell people, cut it off. You have to close up these eyes and these ears and guard your heart, because it is too much. Our brains are not able to process all of this stuff that is going on. You know, and so
Mm.
that's why I'm so big on self-care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so important.
So absolutely.
I mean, so important with self care. Is really, self care is taking care of your soul.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's finding a safe place and just relaxing and
Yes.
replenishing. So now you can go back and be healthy and continue ministering on whatever God has given you to do.
Yes.
You need
Absolutely.
to be whole. And that's
Yes.
the key. You need to be whole. And that's the purpose of the Pain to Purpose podcast and the coaching programs. We need you whole so you can do what God has qualified you, equipped you, purposed you to do in this life. And you
Absolutely.
can't do it hurt. You can't do it dysfunctional. You can't do it with wounds. You need to be healed.
Yes. And to be honest,
Hmm.
you might can do it for a little while with all those things as you said, but you got to get to that place to be healed. And I love the pain to purpose. Um, that was my mantra years ago when I was going through a lot of pain,
Yeah.
because pain can be good,
Hmm.
because it points us in a certain direction,
Hmm.
and it tells us this is an area that you do need healed, just like the child that put their hand on the stove. Well, them pain receptors says, take your hand off. And so pain will lead you to purpose, as it has you, as it has me, which is good, because that's why we're here. We're here to be whole for ourselves and to help others
Hmm.
to get to that place of their true purpose and their true calling in life.
And their true
And that
self.
gives you joy. That gives you joy.
That gives you joy and your true
Yes.
self. And
Yes.
your true self. So many people, as well as myself, I used to walk around with masks, pretending to be something that I was not, pretending to be whole when I was not. I was broken. And
Yes.
I needed to be healed. And I didn't even know that I was so broken. I didn't
Yes.
know. And when my eyes was finally open to the truth, and that's why I tell people, you need to have accountability partners. You need to have you need to have people in your space that will tell you the truth. And
Absolutely.
so this journey for me didn't happen overnight. I was in discipleship training. I was with mentors. I had a whole lot of people in my inner space to hold me accountable to my behaviors. And in those moments, that's when I realized that I am not whole and I need to be whole. And I went on that journey for healing, to be
Yes.
whole. So
Yes.
my eyes can be open to who I was and
Mm-hmm.
what is it that God would have me to do. I want that for each and every one that is watching this program. You have a purpose. There is life on the other side of pain. Pain is not the end of your story. There is life on the other side, and I call it purpose. And it's nothing like it, is it, Laverne?
It's
Stepping
nothing
off.
like it. It's nothing
Nothing
like
like
it.
it each and every
It's nothing
day.
like it.
Nothing
And
like
nothing like it. And to be honest with you, I would not have not wanted to go through that pain
of course.
because I know what's on the other side of that.
Mhm.
And so when you said brokenness, that's the first step of inner healing, that we all have had our hearts broken, and to know that and acknowledge that it's okay, because you said you had disciple people, you had support around you, you was in Bible study, but I think that's where and those things are good and we need them. But again, I think so many times we are just over informed so much and under transformed. That's why we have to have that encounter with the Holy Spirit. He's the only one that can transform our hearts. See, that's the key.
That was
That's the
okay.
key.
Let's talk about that, because
That's the key now.
that's
Because
what I say, real talk, real
yeah,
transformation.
yeah,
We're
you got
talking about transforming you. That transformation is so key. So listen, it's like you're getting all of this information. You're going from one counselor to another counselor to another counselor to another seminar to another seminar. And guess what? There's no application. So you are remaining the same. That's not transformation. What's transformation?
transformation
Laverne?
is an encounter with the Holy Spirit. And I know a whole lot of believers and non-believers are watching this show, but it reminds me when these two men were walking on this road together and they was talking about all the things that had happened. Jesus, they had killed him and then he resurrected. And he's now walking with these two guys and they are unaware who is in their midst. But all the time that they are walking with him, and he talking to them, and this is the Lord Jesus Christ. As soon as he left, they said this. Now, this is transformation. Didn't our hearts burn when he was talking to us? See, that's a change in your heart. When you have an
Change.
encounter with the Holy Spirit, when you have an encounter with the Lord Jesus Christ, you will know it, because your heart will change and you will know it by accepting him as your Lord and Savior.
Yeah. And that's what and that's the thing with transformation. You're talking about real change.
Yes.
You cannot be afraid of change. If you want to move forward, you must be willing to make the sacrifices to change. And change sometimes for some people is not easy.
Yes, it's not. That's why, again, I use inner healing as a process for
Mhm.
emotional healing. You
Mhm.
need it's about what happens inside that heart. So I think that you and I know that um, to be true through all the pain that we have went through our
Mhm.
lives, and I can say we both smiling now.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about before we switch over to grief.
Okay.
Why is we talked a little bit about emotional healing and the importance of emotional healing. Why is it important to share your story on this journey in order to in order to be healed? Is that important?
Sharing your story is the most powerful thing that you and I and everybody listening can do. Because if you think about it, when you go into a doctor's office, when you go into a therapy office, the first thing they're going to ask you is tell me about yourself. Give me your history, share. And so sharing your story, it gives you the power to speak your truth because nobody can tell your story except for yourself. And so sharing your story is very important. Um, I always say your story has power. And when I think about the power, POWER, P stands for purpose and pain. O stands for options. W stands for weights versus words. E, encourage, support. And R to restore hope. And so sharing your story it is so powerful. And I give a great example about that. Think about the women, the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
When they started sharing their story,
Mhm.
it unlocked other women who had closed their mouths. Shame had took over their hearts,
Mhm.
and they could not tell what happened to them. So when they heard these other women sharing their stories,
Mhm.
then they were able to open up and share their stories, which unlocks shame. Shame can take you places where you cannot get back from. But again, Jesus went to the cross, what? Despising the shame, because he knew that shame was a strong emotion.
Mhm.
And so telling your story unlocks shame because you're speaking your own truth. And
Mhm.
nobody can take that from you.
Mhm.
Nobody. And so sharing your story is very, very important.
Very important. And it's important in order to um, get to the healing, get through that healing process. It's so important because I know a lot of people, for some, it's those memories, it's the memories that are so painful that I don't want to recall them. I don't want to remember them. I want to cover them. I want to
Yeah.
suppress those memories. But it's in those memories where you are set free.
Yes. And the only thing that can set you free is your tongue.
Mhm.
Remember, the Bible say in terms of if we speak the truth, it'll set us free. And
Mhm.
so if I continuously tell my story,
Mhm.
it's giving me more boldness, more freedom to
Yeah.
walk in who I am as a woman, as an individual, because not only am I being free, but I'm setting other
It's
people free because they are hearing my story and my story is theirs.
mm.
And
Oh,
so that's able to unlock their emotional pain because so many people think I can't tell nobody. You
body.
better tell you
You gotta
somebody
tell
because they confess your faults one to another so that
Mhm.
you may be healed.
Healed.
And that's it's so much power in the tongue, but that the tongue tells the truth to set us
Tells the
free.
truth. That's right.
Absolutely.
That's
Tell
right.
it, tell
And
it, you got to tell the truth.
that's how we stay in bondage, because we stay in bondage because of fear, and we
Yes,
stay in because of fear because we believe a lie over the truth.
yes,
We believe the
absolutely.
lie over the truth. Right. You uncover the truth and then you're free.
Yes.
You don't have
Yes.
to walk in fear. You don't have to walk in fear. You can walk in truth, and that's where
Yes.
light is. Okay, so
That's
let's talk.
good. That's
uh,
good. That's good. That's
let's
I like that. Where light is,
That's
because
where
the
light is.
lies is in the dark.
The lies is in the dark. Come on out of the dark. Okay, let's talk, because I know we don't have a lot of time. I know you have another appointment. So let's talk a little bit about this. When we talk about emotional healing, we go into the realm of inner healing. I want to lay the foundation first, and then I want to give you a little bit of background of what happened to this person, and then I'll let you take over. I would say back in 2000, actually, I know because this is the book and the journey. And I had to
Right.
actually, read this, write papers and all
Yeah.
of that. But I was so fortunate
Mm.
being a student at Ashland Seminary in Ashland, Ohio. I was on campus one weekend, and the professor was no other than Terry Wardle,
Cherry water.
author of this great book. But he's not just the author of this book, he's author of many books
Yes.
dealing with inner healing,
Yes.
as well as he has a whole ministry dealing with inner healing. And I sat in his class, I
Mm.
sat at his feet,
Mm.
and what an honor it was to sit at this man's feet. He was so he was so, what is the word I'm looking for?
Transparent.
Thank you. That's the word.
Authentic.
He was so transparent. He was so humble. He was just so eager to get this information to you that you can be healed and whole. It was so amazing to be in this giant's classroom.
Yes.
And I read his story, and he
Mm.
shares his story in class. And so
Yes.
I'm not going to be, I'm not um sharing something that he doesn't want the world to know. He shares this online with the world. He shared his story. And so I'm going to share a little bit about his story. What I did not know was that he was a pastor at the time.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure exactly. And when you chime in, you can, maybe
Mhm.
add in the spaces that I'm missing. But as a pastor, we can just kind of understand the pressure that they face when you're truly a shepherd.
Yeah.
I don't know if that led to what happened to him. I'm not sure. But his story goes like this. At the height of his career, we're talking about Terry Wardle. At the height of his career, while leading a large church in California, Terry Wardle had an emotional breakdown
Mhm.
and was institutionalized
Mhm.
as a result.
Mhm.
I can recall him saying that his mind was gone. He did not know who he was.
Mhm.
He was in a mental facility. This educated man, he's Dr. Terry Wardle,
Mhm.
educated man. He's a pastor, he's a professor, and I don't know if he was a professor at that time. I don't know if he was, and I don't know if he had his doctor's degree at that time.
Mhm.
Only thing I see here is that he was a pastor of a very large church.
Mhm.
And after that, he was hospitalized and he suffered from mental illness. And it was through, I believe he said, some woman who came to visit him, and that they introduce inner healing or safe place to him. Laverne, I don't know all of the little bits and pieces, but I know you probably know more. I would like you to take over the story at this point.
I don't know the whole story. I do know that he had a mental break,
Okay.
and that he was institutionalized. I don't know how long. And I did hear that this woman came to him,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure who
She
who she
was.
was,
Mm-hmm.
and and I don't know the whole story,
Mm-hmm.
but the what I know is that this woman helped him in the area of his soul because he had an emotional break, because I think he was diagnosed with clinical anxiety was one of the things that he was diagnosed with, and because he actually lives with that anxiety, but he manages it. And again, I don't know if he manages it through medication or not,
Mm-hmm.
but he has learned to live with it because he said that those dark places that are real, and that we can, for whatever reason, go to them. You know, it can happen to anybody. Like you said, he was a pastor, he had a large ministry, a teacher, and something happened in his mind. I don't
It
know if it
was
was a
child.
chemical imbalance. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure, but he broke to the point where he had to be institutionalized. And
Yeah.
so I'm not sure about or clear about his whole story, but I
Mm-hmm.
know now that he's on the other side.
He's on the
That
other
I know. Now, I don't know what this woman did, but I'm thinking that she took him through some emotional healing. And again, I can't speak 100% on it, but I know that he is in a good place today.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only did it happen for him, after that, he shared his experience because he was institutionalized and now
Hmm. Hmm.
he's living a normal, healthy life.
Yes.
And so he shared this ministry with Ashland Seminary. This
Hmm.
is a part of their course,
Yes.
inner healing prayers, and that's all a part of the counseling course. When
Yes.
you go into counseling, you're taking these classes that he introduced to this institution because it saved his life,
Yes.
and now it's saving so many other lives. It saved my life as I'm sitting in Ashland Seminary going through these counseling courses. I'm sitting in the class and a trigger hit me, and all of my memories from the past that I thought I buried, came rushing to the
Yes.
front of my.
Yes.
And I said, oh my gosh, this is what has happened to me. And this is why I act the way I do. I had to get back to the root. I didn't understand what it was, Vern. I had to get to the root cause. And when I was able to get to the root cause and deal with that, I was free.
Yes. So you had buried,
Oh,
you had buried it
I buried
because it was
it.
too
Was
painful.
painful.
Too
It
painful.
was it was not just painful, it was embarrassing. It was painful, it was embarrassing, it was shameful, and
Yes.
I buried it.
Yes.
I
So
buried it because I didn't, and not, I'm sorry, I buried it because couple of reasons. I buried it because of what it made me look like.
yes.
And not only that, what it made the perpetrator look like and
Yes.
everyone else involved.
Yes.
And I said I had to bury it because could nobody know about this. And from that came all of these dysfunctional behaviors from
Oh,
that,
oh,
from
absolutely.
from
Only
that.
only dysfunction can come
Yep.
from a place of pain like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's it can't be rational.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's no way, because you're saying that you took all of that, you buried it, you took that shame, and
Mm-hmm.
then you was probably protecting someone,
Absolutely.
right? Because
Yes.
that's what we do as women,
Yeah.
as nurturers, as caregivers, as sometimes as ministers.
Yeah.
We protect the leaders that are higher up,
Yeah.
and that's what we do, and we shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, some things should not be protected.
Mm-hmm.
Some things need to be shared so
Yes.
that people can be healed,
So people
right?
can be healed. Absolutely.
Right. As opposed
Absolutely.
to just keep on perpetrating this thing.
Right. And you know what? I even, and I guess I need to share this part.
Mm-hmm.
I still protected, although I had to expose, I didn't come out and expose it totally because I didn't see the benefit of me bringing down certain people, you know.
Yes.
So I had to get to a point where I had to expose it only to the point where I could be healed because one of the persons was deceased. So I'm like, what I didn't see the benefit in exposing something if this person is deceased
Yeah.
and cannot.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. You do have to weigh that. You have to weigh the costs and the benefits.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah. So
That
anyway,
and that's wise.
yeah,
That's
but
a wise woman.
yeah, it's still not easy. But
But no.
I tell you what, I was able to, and I think the most important part here, Laverne, the most important part was I was able to forgive that person. I was able to forgive that person. And when I was able to forgive that person, I
Mm-hmm.
was free. And
And
that's what's important. Not that I had to expose him to the world, not that
right.
I had to expose him to his family, and that they had to deal with something that they couldn't do anything with. But I forgave that person and I was set free. And that was most important, that I was able to be set free.
And you know, Melissa, that's excellent because forgiveness is the first step toward healing.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the steps before we go into our commercial and then grieving. Go ahead.
Well. Let me just talk about forgiveness because that's a whole separate
Mm-hmm.
piece
Okay.
than the inner healing. But because forgiveness is not a natural response,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially when we hurt deeply or even hurt, it's just not natural. But it's really forgiveness has to be supernatural
Mm-hmm.
because it's not a one-time thing because that thing will come up again in our mind, in our soul, and in our spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me say also, forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation because you can forgive somebody
Mm-hmm.
from a heart level, but you don't have to be reconciled with them in a relationship,
Wow.
especially if that relationship was a hurtful relationship. So we need to discern, yes, I can forgive you, but I don't need to be reconciled with you. And forgiveness is not a feeling. It's not something we feel. It has to come from the heart. Because if biblical forgiveness is if I forgive you for something that you did to me, and if it's a biblical forgiveness, then I'm not going to bring it up again. Now I'll remember it because that's how God made us, wonderfully and fearfully made. But if I forgive you, I'm not going to bring that up because that's like putting you back in jail. I've forgiven you, right? So forgiveness is not letting people who are guilty off the hook either.
Mm-hmm.
You had a transgression, you did something, then there are consequences for what you have done. I forgive you, but you still might have those consequences because you did something that was not right.
Mm-hmm.
And forgiveness has nothing to do with fairness. It's a fact. You did something, I forgive you, but it's not about being fair. What you did was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness has steps to it. It,
Okay.
it, it, it does. But again, it's a heart issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not something in my head. I'm saying, oh, I'm gonna forgive the person. If I'm not convicted in my heart about that, then
Mm-hmm.
it's not whole.
Mm.
But forgiveness has to take place in order for healing to take place.
Take
Because
place.
remember, Jesus even said it on the cross. He said, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Lord, just forgive them.
So what are other, I mean, I know forgiveness is so important in so many different areas.
And it's not easy.
And when you talk about releasing someone from what they have done to you or how they have violated you, releasing
Yes,
them from that,
yes, yes.
that's not easy
No,
process.
it's not. No, it's
But
not.
listen, it's
It's,
the first step in your healing. I
it's
don't know,
necessary.
it's necessary in your healing process. I don't want to
It-
say the first step away, but it's necessary in your healing process. It's
yes,
necessary for you to be free.
yes. And you said it, for you to be free.
For you to be free.
Because if I don't forgive that person, I'm the one that's in bondage.
You're in
They
bondage.
might not even know it. Because I was in a similar situation where a person violated me. I said no, but that person violated me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I forgave the person, not right away. This was some years later.
Mm-hmm.
But what had me was the shame because I ain't tell nobody.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so I finally got to the point where I was able to tell a family member
Mm-hmm.
what this person did to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that violated me, the family member, was their best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I didn't say anything.
Right.
But when I told my family member that your best friend back in the day violated me sexually, and you know what he said to me? This is my family member. This is a brother of mine. He said to me, he said, Laverne, I am so sorry that happened to you. Tears came down my eyes. He released my soul. For him to say, I'm sorry that happened to you,
Mm-hmm.
it helped me to heal. As opposed, he could have responded in a whole different kind of way, and it
Mm-hmm.
could have exasperated my feelings that I had. And so not only did I forgive the person, but I was released from the shame because I told somebody. And I tell the story. I tell the story all the time now. And that's the thing. We have to be authentic, transparent, share our story repeatedly because that's a part of healing.
Yes.
That's wound care. You know how they have wound care out in these hospitals? That's wound care in the emotional wound care. Tell your
Right.
story, girl.
Yeah, you said.
Tell
Okay.
somebody.
What other steps would you like to share in the emotional healing process? What other steps?
Well, the first thing in terms of inner healing, you have to tell everybody, you got to realize everybody is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, listening to somebody's story and telling them, I hear you, I see you. That's so important that people hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can start the inner healing process because the heart was broken in response to something that happened to them in their past. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where you go to the past. That's
Mm-hmm.
the second step in inner healing. I got to find out which core values or core values with an S has been broken, has been wounded.
Okay.
And then sometimes our reactions to events, this existential stuff that's going on, not things that has happened to themselves, places people in bondage because of stuff that's going on in the outside world. So you have to discern, am I looking at this person for something that happened existentially or also and internally? It can be both. It's going to be internal, but it could be external too, like people injustice, especially us as African Americans. We feel all this injustice that's coming upon us. And so COVID, it opened up a whole lot of stuff for a whole lot of people. We dealing with so much more because COVID unearthed a whole lot of things. Okay. And so that's number 3. Number 4 is, in terms of a principle, we have to present difficulties often triggered by past pain. So we got to find those triggers that hit those, because the thing is, then we need to talk about these triggers, and the Bible talks about we need to put them off, but we got to put some on in place of them so they won't trigger us. So by knowing what our triggers are, then we can stay away from them, but also put something in place of them. Right?
Good. Okay.
And so the 5th principle is life-changing truth can be known and experienced when God communicates it to us in a supernatural way. That's the transformation. When he, it's a friend of mine, let's say a friend of a friend. We used to have, Bible study together. It's 4 of us have a Bible study together. And this one friend came in and she had a revelation. And you know what her revelation was? Jesus is a man. And we thinking, we know that. But God had given it to her in a deeper level that transformed her heart. For us, it was like, yeah, we know he's a man, but it did something for her. And so that's the encounter that we all have to have. And we didn't even talk about
those encounters.
We didn't even talk about grief.
We're going to talk about grief in a second. Let's go to commercial.
This is Melissa Johnson of Wow Ministries, LLC, creator of the Pain to Purpose program. It is just a pleasure to come to you each and every week to inspire you to pursue your purpose passionately. You have been given a God-given purpose. When you were created with a purpose in mind. And it's up to you to discover what that purpose is and to pursue it passionately each and every day of your life. At the end of your days, you can say, I have finished what I was created to do.
The Pain to Purpose Transformation System. This system is created for you to take you from a life of pain into a life of purpose so you can realize personal success.
This is a life coaching program that will transform your life. It's an 8-week discovery of who you are and what you have been called to do. This is Melissa Johnson of Wow Ministries. Be inspired to inspire the world.
Pain to Purpose, taking you from a life of pain, of not knowing who you are and what you have been called to do, to a life of purpose, stepping into your calling and pursuing personal success passionately. Wow Ministries, coaching programs designed for you. You can book your consultation now at wowministriesllc.com.
Have a wild kind of day.
Welcome back to the Pain to Purpose podcast with Melissa Johnson, your host, and my guest, Laverne Kimbrough. Welcome back. I know we only have a couple of minutes, and in our last minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about grief. This is my first question because when I think about grief, and when most people think about grief, I think they think about death. Is grief associated only with death? or do we grieve in other ways?
We grieve. It's much broader. That's why they call it grief and loss. Anything that you have perceived that you have lost. People lose their vision. And I'm not talking about their eyes, but in the sense of what they had plans for. People lose body parts. I mean, so anything that you have lost, anything is grief because it changed who you are in that moment. And so then there's a process because, you know, when we grieve, then things, the first thing when we lose something, a lot of times the first thing we do, we go in shock or we in disbelief. I can't believe that happened. But whatever the loss is, I can't believe that happened. And so when this shock comes over you or this disbelief, you know, that's to help your body to calm down and not maybe have a heart attack. Because you know, some people have to have medication if they lose somebody just to calm them down. And so loss, anything that changes what it was to something different. So that loss is broad. And we don't handle loss in whatever capacity it is. Not everybody, but a lot of people, we don't handle it well. We don't handle it well.
So, what is the appropriate way to handle grief? What is the appropriate way to handle it?
Well, it's different for different people. The first thing is to acknowledge that you lost it.
So, come out of denial.
Yeah, you gotta acknowledge the loss. You gotta experience the pain. That's part of the process. Then you have to readjust to the loss. You know, you've heard this term so much, a new normal. But that don't happen right away, regardless of what the loss. And then you have to reinvest your emotional energy because you lost it back in the beginning. So you got to reinvest it. You got to fortify your emotions, whatever those emotions are. And there's a plethora of emotions. People think when you say emotions, they say, oh, happy, angry, sad, afraid. We have a plethora of emotions. And then after reinvesting emotional energy, you have to reconcile that loss. You have to reconcile.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
You got to come to terms
with that what has been gone. Whatever.
Yeah, because we've seen people, as ministers in the church, we've seen people at home goings. I've literally seen people trying to take the body out the casket. That's not reconciling the loss. That's grief and trauma and a whole lot of other stuff. And so those are kind of the steps in terms of the loss. And we got to I think of this in terms of grief, because I know we only have a minute or so. Grief, it's a work. You got to walk through it. It's a grief work. That's why Psalms 23 say, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Death is a shadow. That means that shadow is not going to always be there. God give us so many counseling outlines, in the Bible. It's amazing because he loves us and he wants to help us. And who knows more than anybody else about grief than Jesus? But let me just say this, if I got time.
You have time.
In terms of our emotions, God gave us our emotions. And we want to have healthy emotions. That's why emotional healing is important, or emotional healthiness is very important, because when we look at the word, and again, Jesus was a man. He was fully God, but he was fully a man too. And when Jesus expressed emotion in the Bible, the whole thing about us expressing our emotions, we want to make the right choice and glorify God in our emotions, because when Jesus went to the tomb and he saw all of that grief and Mary and Martha grieving, he started crying.
Mm.
And so he expressed his emotion. But
Mm.
right after he expressed his emotions, what happened? In the right way, God was glorified. Lazarus raised from the grave. And so we want our emotions to glorify God, and then miracles can happen.
Miracles.
Same thing with at the temple, righteous anger. The Bible say, be angry. Ain't nothing wrong with being angry. You just don't sin with it, right? And so he had righteous anger. And after he threw everybody out, a few scriptures down, he started healing people.
Mm.
Our emotions can be healing to a lot of people if we emote in the right way.
Right way. Yes, I like that. I like that.
Right
Okay.
way.
Okay, so in our last time, this is, I know we only have, I know you have another appointment. I want you to talk about this because we didn't talk about this, and I'm sure it relates to grief as well. How important is it to have a safe place? I can remember time after time being in the counseling classes, and we always would sit there and do these exercises, and we would have to meditate until we were able to get into a safe place. What is the importance of being in a safe place?
Well, in those, how it was used there, a safe place is a place in your past that you felt comfortable, secure, and safe.
Wow.
One of my safe places was underneath the dining room table, because back in the day, we had them long tablecloths and they would
Yep.
almost go to the floor. So I would go in there and hide. For me, that was a safe place. And so what's important, and you have many safe places, and a safe place is just that, a place where you feel secure, comfortable, and safe. And so sometimes in therapy, I think when you were saying, Melissa, you had these thoughts, but you suppressed them, right? But then something triggered those thoughts.
Right.
Well, when those thoughts that are harmful or hard or hurtful or tragic or trauma, if the thing about it is trying to get to that safe place to calm those thoughts down. And so that's why it's important for us to have these safe places, because we are going to experience things in our minds and our thoughts that can be triggers, and then if we can just mentally get to the safe place, then we can calm those thoughts down. So that's important
And
to
so,
have those.
why is it important to calm those thoughts down?
Well, because if we stay in an unhealthy place, it can lead to doing unhealthy things to ourselves or to others. It
So
just
the
depends on what the trauma is.
So the safe place is getting you to a place where we can deal with the wound. So it's not
Yes,
necessarily okay. So it's not avoidance. It's just getting you to a safe place. Now let's deal with what's going on.
yes.
Okay.
Because even in my healing, Terry Wardle took me to my safe place first, because he knew that I had trauma within me. And so I went to my safe place first, and then he led me to my wound, and it was very hard. But he always brought it back. He said, Laverne, okay, remember your safe place. Remember your safe place. And so that helped me calm down, because I could see the trauma down the road,
Wow.
because it was in my memory.
Wow.
And that's something about memories.
It is. And let me say this too. I like that because even being free, sometimes those memories can try to come back up.
Trigger.
I like that. Yeah, it can try to come sneak in, and you can have your mind switch and go to a safe place. I like that.
Yes.
So you can
it takes training. It's not,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
gotta
it's like,
train to do that.
yep, you really do.
You
It's
do.
taking your mind off of those past minutes. It's not saying I'm avoiding it or anything,
Right,
because
right.
those memories have been healed. And so
Yes.
although they come back, they don't hurt me the way they used to hurt me.
Yes,
I want to think on
absolutely.
those things, because he told me to think on those things that are good and was pure and was lovely.
There you
So
go.
now
There
I
you go.
change the way I think, and I go to my safe place, and I think
Yes.
healthy thoughts. I like
Yes.
that.
Yeah, and the
Yes.
other thing too, another I don't want to use the word as a coping, but
Mhm.
another thing, the Bible say hide the word in your heart. And so the Holy Spirit can bring that word up in you that you just thought of it in Philippians,
Mhm.
right? I need to
Right.
think on these things. And so the Holy Spirit will be helping us
Mhm.
to in our emotional healing also,
Mhm.
because that's where he is.
Mhm.
He's in our soul. He's
Mhm.
in our heart. And
Mhm.
he wants us, because he said, I've come to heal the brokenhearted
Mhm.
and set the captive free. And that's one of my favorite verses in
I like
Isaiah
that.
61, 1
I
through
like
3.
that. So there's freedom.
Because it's,
There's
it's,
freedom.
it's truth. It's
Woo!
truth.
There's freedom.
Right.
There's freedom. That was my last question. Can we ever be free? Can we ever be free? Listen, I can't. All I can say is that I was lost, I was wounded, but
Yeah.
now I'm free. Did it happen overnight? Nope. It
No.
didn't happen overnight. It was a process. I
Yeah.
call it a journey.
Yeah.
The
That book,
journey.
the
The
journey.
journey. As
Yeah.
Terry Wardle wrote, the journey.
Yeah.
I call it a journey. It was a
Yeah.
journey.
It is. It is.
It's a journey.
Well, it was wonderful to be on this journey with you.
Well, listen.
And it's only, and I want to say this, Melissa. It's only a handful of people who call me Vern, and they are special. Okay, you special because there's not too many people. My family don't even call me Vern. And I remember when we met, that's the first thing you say. You say Vern. I was like, okay, she good.
Okay, Laverne, I'm sorry. I didn't even say that.
No, I love it. Don't stop. Don't stop.
Okay, what do you want the viewers to walk away with in this last minute? What is important for them to understand as it relates to emotional healing and grief and all of that? What do you want them to walk away with?
Well, one, we are all broken, but God said that he came to heal the brokenhearted. So emotional healing, we all experience emotional hurt. And so if you find yourself like in this repeative process of certain emotions, then seek somebody out that knows about emotional healing. Because all of us have been hurt or wounded in our past. I'm talking about all of us because
All
we're
of
all
us.
broken.
We live in a
And
broken
so
world.
we do. And so, let's not fool yourselves or
Mhm.
fool ourselves.
Mhm.
I have admitted it. Melissa has admitted it. That's the first point to healing, is to admit it
Admit it.
and then seek
Seek
some help.
help.
Seek some help.
Seek help.
And I'm gonna post my summer series.
Please.
I'm gonna post it on social media in a
And
little bit.
how can my viewers get in contact with you if they want to discuss more of this conversation? Is it
Basically you see my name down there, and just my email. Just shoot me an email at att.net. My name at att.net. I will respond to you.
There's your lifeline. There's your lifeline. I would like to thank my guest, Laverne Kimbrough, for this wonderful conversation on emotional healing, inner healing, and grief. Of course, we couldn't deal with everything. I hope something was said to help you get help and that you can be free.
Amen.
And so you can go from a life of pain to a life of purpose. This is Melissa Johnson from Wild Ministries with the Pain to Purpose podcast. I pray you have a wow kind of day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Melissa Johnson of Wow Ministries.
Thank you for watching the Pain to Purpose podcast with your host, Melissa Johnson. For more information on this topic and others, go to our website at wowministriesllc.com. If you are in need of coaching, book your consultation today and let us take you from a life of pain to a life of purpose. This has been Melissa Johnson, Wow Ministries, with the Pain to Purpose podcast.